right here.
Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Greetings, number 46, Jackie. Oh, we're almost to 50. Wouldn't that be cool? 50 for the 1950s, upcoming. Four more. Yes, but each guest has had a wonderful story to tell about the 1950s. We just all meld together. You know, all those stories are like the fibers in a woven cloth about that decade of the 1950s. We each had our lives that we lived, or else have been influenced by someone who lived during that 1950s decade, that unique time period in not only America, but in the world. And who would have known that 70 some years later, or something like that, here we are talking about it and grabbing all those wonderful memories from guests around the world. And Jackie, today is no different. We have a wonderful guest coming to share her story about the life in the 1950s.
We do, but I would like to point our viewers to the bottom screen there. You see that little banner running across the bottom. It is our website, www.whilethewindmillwatch.com, and we would like to invite you to go to that website, because you'll learn more about the book, about the vendors, about the sisters themselves, and about the 1950s Fun Chat. Up in the right hand corner, you'll see a beautiful North Dakota sunset that wraps around the book, and down in the corner there's a little white spot. Well, that white spot is pretty important, because when you get the book, you'll see that it is the 2022 Independent Press Award as a distinguished favorite in the category of regional nonfiction. Our book was bestowed that particular honor just in April of this year. So we are very proud of that and very pleased that an official entity thought it was worth something in that category.
All that crafting of sentences that we did during the COVID year just turned out to be a fruitful combination of words that are speaking to people's hearts.
Yes, they are. Now then, we'll get to our wonderful guest that we have here. Her name is Juliana Selecky Semple, and she was born in 1937 and grew up in Glen Lyon, Pennsylvania, the oldest of 7 children. There are 20 years between the oldest and the youngest siblings, and now Juliana lives in Pennsylvania. So Juliana's parents were loving and wonderful, who imparted rules and expectations, including respect. The warm cocoon of her family was difficult to leave. She began her adventure in the big city of Philadelphia to attend Temple University School of Nursing. This move was a life-changing experience in many ways. But in 1960, Juliana married Joe, a medical student. They have 4 children, 2 doctors, 1 nurse, and 1 in fashion merchandising field. And they have 5 grandchildren. So welcome, Juliana. We're really glad to
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you.
So let's begin by having you give us a little peek into your teenage years in the 1950s. What can you tell us about your school and your community?
Well, as you said, I was the oldest of 7, although I must admit, I only helped I only lived at home with 6 because by the time I went to nursing school, my family was surprised by a new brother. So I really only lived with 5 brothers and sisters in a small coal mining town. Very safe, very nice. My father's father had worked in the mines and was dedicated to educating his family. And my father went to the University of Pennsylvania and was a lawyer. So in my town, I was a little bit different because my father was one of the few professionals, unlike my friends' fathers who worked in the coal mines. But nevertheless, it was a very safe, lovely environment. And we had no television. We weren't allowed on the phones much because you didn't chat too long. So if you wanted to visit with your friends, you had to make arrangements. And my best friend lived next door and her bedroom faced mine. And our homes were about 20, 30 yards apart. So when Barbara wanted to talk to me, she would whistle. I would hear her. And she and I would talk through our bedroom windows. So you had to become very creative because again, we had no TV. Our first TV was my senior year in high school at Christmas time. And before that, what teenager read the newspaper and we didn't hear the radio much. So it was a little bit of a sheltered life and yet a very lovely childhood.
Were there comic books available to you?
Oh, yes. And at the local penny store, you had to buy 5 cents worth of candy before she'd sell you a comic book. There was always a gimmick. But my brothers, my young brothers just next to my age, were into the Superman and what have you. And I can't even remember, but certainly the cartoons and such were big entertainment for me as I babysat my younger sibling.
Yes. Well, was there Blondie and Dagwood?
Oh, yes.
And Archie and Veronica?
Absolutely. Thank you for helping me remember that.
Yes. And Superman.
Yeah.
And Superman. Well, that was for brothers. See, my family was kind of divided in 3. There was Juliana. We were all named after relatives, unlike in today's world where you have children named, North and Paris and Apple. Juliana, Paul, John, Mary, Tommy, Heidi, Peter. Now, Heidi was really Helen after my mother, but we had to play Heidi with her, and she's not that much younger than me, and she's still Heidi. Sure. But there was Juliana, Paul, and Don, and then a gap. And then along came Mary, Tommy, and Heidi. And John, Paul, and I are with 3 years apart, and then again with the gap. So there's 10 years between Mary, who was the oldest of the second group. And I noticed my mother's clothing was a little unusual one day. And I said, Mom, what's with this top you have on? Now, remember, I was, how old? I know, in high school. Well, there was this big bow across her bosom. And in those days, they wore these flouncy tops with big bows across, thinking it was hiding something. And of course, it made it much more obvious. And her skirts would have the elastic across her belly underneath this blouse. Well, along came Mary. Not too many months later after Mary came, oh my, there was another bow across my mother's bosom. Then came Tommy. And months later, there was yet another bow. So our notice of oncoming sibling were my mother's bows on her outfits. Yes.
Was she able to wear those same clothes for all 7 pregnancies?
Oh God, I hope not. They kind of were. Well, not for the youngest. And then again, there was a gap. And as I said a little earlier, I was the first to leave. So my first 5 years of the decade were at home. And then in 1955, I graduated from high school and went off to the big city of Philadelphia to study nursing. And before, at the end of the decade, another bow popped up. No, not really. Anyway, along came Peter. So here I was, a student nurse in Philadelphia, taking care of my mother and my baby brother.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to know, did that bow imprint on you? So when you were pregnant, you had bows across your face?
Never would I wear a bow like that. No.
Well, and back then in the 50s, was it, I don't think women who were pregnant wore pants or shorts or slacks.
Oh,
Wasn't
no, I don't remember seeing my mother wear pants until she was, 50, 60 years old. She always had a house dress on. She always dressed very lovely. Unfortunately, she did not have to leave the home to work outside the home, as some of my friends' mothers did. So we were lucky to have mom home all the time. No, she was lovely. So this bow thing just got to be a family thing. And I think we burned them somewhere. I don't know where, but they were gone.
Yeah.
So Peter, in my mother's pregnancy with Peter, he did not have a bow in front of him, no.
Okay.
Trivia.
Do you think, like, you kind of grew up taking care and mothering your siblings? So did this have any influence on you becoming a nurse, or was there another reason why you chose that?
I think watching my mother with the children and being a caretaker that she was, and that transposing itself into my life. And on the other hand, I was a people person, and in my town, many of my friends' mothers worked in a factory. They had clothing factories to supplement the income of the miners, or you were a secretary. Now, my mother was a secretary, which is she worked for her brother, the lawyer, and that's how she met my dad. But part of it was not only my influence at home, but the fact that I just couldn't see myself confined to an office, which was certainly nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't in my liking. And I remember saying to my father, who was very well educated, Dad, are you disappointed I'm not going to college? Because in the 50s, I need to remind you, there were no 4-year programs. It was a 3-year certificate program. We became RNs, of course, and took state boards. And my father said, no, I'm not disappointed, but you will go to a university school plan where they are doing research. And so Temple was a perfect fit for me. Plus, they had pink student uniforms. That didn't hurt.
Exactly.
It was a wonderful experience for me, and yet a very enlightening for this kid from the coal mines to go to Philly.
Wonderful.
I bet it was.
When did the fashion picture for nurses change? You said you were, as a student, in a pink uniform, and then did you wear the nurse's cap, and did you wear the white hose and the white thick-soled shoes?
Absolutely. Each hospital, there were quite a few hospitals. Of course, I was best versed in the Philadelphia schools primarily. Each hospital had its own colored uniform. And we all had the white aprons over the top, and we had a cap indicative of the school that we belonged to, or that we were learning in and graduated from. So if a new nurse came that was a graduate to Temple Hospital, we knew where she trained by the shape of her hat that she perched on the back of her head. And so for many years, the nursing, I don't know when scrub suits took over, but in my nursing years, and then when I finished, of course, it was a full white uniform with the formal hat and the white stockings and shoes. Yes.
Do you remember when the cap started to be non? Yeah.
No, I don't. But I didn't buy the argument. They'd say, well, it got bumped on the curtains or this or that, and I thought, no. But so I really don't remember, because by then I was a young mother myself, and not into the nursing field at that time.
Okay, all righty.
But I want to tell you a story about helping with these kids and growing up in this small town. We did not have a clothes dryer, and in Pennsylvania, as you can certainly realize, we had snowy winters, and not having a clothes dryer, and there were cloth diapers. So my mother we had a washing machine in the kitchen. My mother would wash the diapers and hang them on the line. And in the winter, they became somewhat frozen. So it was my job when I came home, like a junior, sophomore, junior, senior, take the diapers off the line, let them soften, and then, if you can imagine, I mangled them. If you remember, Mangle was an iron that had a roller on it, and the heat applicator came down onto this roller, and you worked it with your knee. So part of my winter job was to mangle diapers for my 3 young siblings.
Oh boy.
Which always drove me crazy because the next day you knew there was the same batch going back up on the line.
Yep.
I remember, Jackie, do you remember when Mom had a mangle in our home? I think she was trying it.
Yeah, the man who sold it said you can use it for a month free. So we did, and I remember using it. And Mom said no thanks, but I mean, who irons? I guess it used to be that people ironed sheets and towels and diapers.
Right, diapers. There were those that were really clever and did shirts and such, but no, ours was primarily flatware, napkins, and as I said, Mary, Tommy, and Heidi were 1 year apart, and so and my 2 brothers next to me were 1 year younger and 2 years younger, and other than aggravate their big sister, I was the one that would come home from school and put these kids in a stroller. And I'd say to my mother, okay, I'll give you an hour. And I would walk as long as it took me to get down to the end of town and back. And then I was done. And then I had to go and Mangle. But it was a wonderful childhood. I had no regrets. And we ate dinner at 6 o'clock. My father came home. The Angelus was ringing. He'd walk in the door and we were at the dinner table. In the summer, you had to come in and get cleaned up, as we called it, and be at the dinner table at 6 o'clock. And it was a lovely life. Did any of the children help prepare the meal, or was that your mom's main responsibility? No, that was my mom's. I mean, in fact, till I got married, I never cooked. I peeled potatoes and I set the table. We were all helpers. Now, unlike my sister Mary, who's 10 years my junior, one of the greatest tragedies, I was 22 and Peter was 2 when my father died suddenly of a coronary. And the 3 older kids, Juliana, Paul, and John, were already gone from the home. My brothers were in college. And in fact, I had just been married. And Mary then was 12. And there were the 3 younger ones under her. So Mary then became an active cook and chef in the kitchen because Mom had to go back to work. So she and I lived different lives, my sister Mary and I, within that 10-year span.
Yes. You mentioned earlier that, at least to us, that while you were a student nurse, you helped take care of your mom, who had her last baby in the hospital in Philadelphia. So can you tell me how was that role reversal? How did you feel about it? It did not go well. She didn't listen to me. Oh dear. I was a student nurse at Temple, and my mother was sent because of her age and the surprise of the pregnancy and with some blood dyscrasia. Our local doctor sent her down to Philadelphia to the University of Pennsylvania. And their nursing students had a different outfit. But anyway, my mother was able to coerce her obstetrician that I come in and take care of her. So first of all, I was a duck out of water in that I was in a pink uniform, unlike the University of Pennsylvania kids. And my mother had to have a cesarean. So in the room I go and say, Mom, it's time to get up. We need to walk. No, Juliana. Mom, you have to drink. It's time to go. No, she did not listen because I was her child. And she'd say, it hurts. I can't. So I finally went to the nurse's station. I said, okay, guys, I lost. You won. But I did take my vacation time and go home with my mother. So here I was taking care of my mother post-section and my baby and my new baby brother. Yeah. And that was another warm, wonderful experience for you. It was. Was it? It was. It really was. Yes. Yeah, good. So you've spoken a lot of your mother and your father. And can you tell me what person might be the most influential in your life? Oh, I for different reasons, both of them. My father was a lovely, honest man, kind, and as I said, as you mentioned in my bio, demanded respect. There was never any back talk. You didn't even think about it. Right. And I was intimidated by him, and he was one of my favorite high school stories that I'll try to make quick. My family says I never can tell a quick story, but my father was the lawyer for the Liquor Control Board.
So here I am going to my high school prom with my crush from the guy from the football team. And my father said, as this young man's picking me up, and as would happen, you went to the prom at the school and then out to dinner to a restaurant. And my father said, well, who's going to chaperone your group? Well, I thought, oh my, if I ever thought I wanted to run away from home, that was it. So the long and the short of it is, here I am with this football player and all the rest of the football players and their dates, and we're at this restaurant, and the liquor control board had clamped down because there had been some accidents and drinking on prom time. And I look across the room, and there's my mother's brother, Uncle Tommy, standing there. And next to him is the sheriff, who I had met through my father. And the sheriff said to this man, are you chaperoning this party? And he said, yes. And my uncle looked at me and winked, and I thought, oh my God, my father sent my uncle. He saved me. And so that's a prom party that I think the school talked about for a long time, that Juliana's uncle had to come to save her from the sheriff. True.
It was a risk.
But my mom was a fabulous woman, and as I said, my father died young, and she took over. But my life spent at home was with both parents, so I was luckier than my brother. Juliana, Paul, and John were lucky to have the two parents. Mary, Tommy, Heidi, Peter grew up with just my mom.
Yeah. Yes. We understand, Juliana, that when you were in high school, you were a majorette.
Oh, yes, I was.
Tell us about, and there might even be some of our listeners who don't know what the role of a majorette is.
Well, in my day, when you were in junior high, the majorettes there were only 2 majorettes per year selected. The majorettes would come to the school and teach 8th and 9th graders how to twirl a baton. Well, that was not a lot of fun, because as I tried to twirl batons, they would hit my elbow, and I had black and blue elbows, but I was resilient and decided that this was something I wanted to do. And at the end of the school year, they announced which of this group of students would be the majorette. So at the band concert they called my name. I thought, oh, I'm going to die and go to bed. So we had very formal military uniforms that the school provided. And people now use makeup on their face. Well, you couldn't have those white, dumb-looking legs, so we used leg makeup. Yeah. And I'd stand in our bathtub, and the little kids would watch me as I'm putting on this makeup on my legs, so that it had some color coming out of the white boots. Yeah. And we twirled 2 batons. We thought that we were pretty special. We were the only school that twirled 2 batons. Yes. Yes.
The responsibility of the majorettes was to lead the band during parades. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. We didn't have so that was in my senior year, I was the head majorette, and I always knew I was going to really mess up one of the acts up out on the field. And then we'd go on a parade up in Wilkes-Barre, and that would be rain or snow or something. Yeah, but it was great. It was a wonderful opportunity that not a lot of high school kids had. And so, and my family bought into it. My brothers played football, the 2 older brothers, or younger than me, but older than the little ones. Yeah. So it was a wonderful way to grow up. And as I said, the second half of my life, they sent off this kid from the coal mines to Wilkes-Barre, from Wilkes-Barre to Philadelphia. And to go home, I'd have to ride a bus. There was like a Greyhound bus for 2 hours. So I'd go home at noon on Saturday, and my father put me back on the bus at 4 o'clock on Sunday. I loved schooling, but I wanted to be home too. So it was hard for a kid like me in a sheltered childhood.
Yes. So did your college have majorettes also?
Say it again, please.
Did your college use majorettes also?
No. It was like the nursing schools in those days were not college based. We only were in the hospital. All our curriculum was done in the hospital, and there was no college experience. My nursing background had no instruction in any of the humanities. It was all pharmacology, nutrition, and no English, history, or anything. In those days, in the 3-year program, which was the only one available to any of us. Then the first year I graduated in when did I graduate? 58. was when the 4-year program was starting to become established, that now is the norm to get your BS. And these gals have the opportunity to take college type courses, but mine was all medical.
Okay, well, what about these medical school fraternity parties that you have mentioned?
Oh, yes. Well, Temple University had a medical school. And unlike a lot of medical schools, they had a fraternity system. And if you were a student nurse, you could go to the parties on Saturday night, where they would, no big surprise, have a keg on tap. But if you were a graduate, you had to have a date. And in fact, that's how I met my husband. He was a medical student. And I was still under 20 years old. And he said, well, are you going to the party? And I thought, oh, man, I don't have a date and I'm a graduate. Don't you know? Kind of thing. So he said, to this day, he tells me 62 years of marriage. He says he felt stuck. So I got invited to the party and the rest is history.
Okay.
Juliana, going back to your nursing experience, can you think of one incident with a patient that is very memorable, either in your mind, either a positive or a negative experience?
No, we don't need to, in today's world, we don't need any negative stories.
Okay.
They were all great. And I don't want to use medical terms, but one of my favorite stories, we had a large Black population in Philadelphia, and a large maternity department. And we had a huge ward with many beds, and these gals had great care, great maternal care. And I love that, and working in the nursery. Now, one woman said to me, gee, I've had, 8 children. I don't know what to call this child. And one of my friends, the medical student, came by and he said, I think you should call the child Placenta. And she
really?
And I couldn't talk her out of it. So someplace in this world, there's a child named Placenta Jones.
Oh my word.
True story.
I wonder if she's changed her name.
Oh, I don't know. But I loved it. It was a wonderful choice for me. And then when my husband and I, my boyfriend, fiance, and I talked about getting married, I had been away from the home that I loved. So, and Peter was a baby. So I was in Philadelphia. My roommates were dating. My husband had left for internship. He had left Philadelphia to go back to Erie, which is where I still live. And I called home one day. I said, what do you think if I come home? Well, yes, of course you come home. So I did. I packed up in Philly and I went home. Peter was 2 and my father was still there. And I got a job at the local hospital working 11 to 7. So I would take my father's car, go to the hospital, work 11 to 7, come home and have breakfast with my father before the kids got moving, which was a gift because we lost him soon thereafter. So, but it was a shock to leave Temple University and go to the general hospital. Not that it wasn't a good general hospital. And so then during the day, I would sleep while the kids were in school and they'd come and get me up and I would have dinner with them. And it was a wonderful 6 months before I married to go back home. Not many of us have a chance to go back home.
Yeah.
Were most of the patients in a ward? Were there even any semi-private rooms or?
Oh, no. It was a largely very popular medical institution. We had people coming in private planes from all over the world. Some of our departments were worldwide known. And so the private patients had fabulous care, and the semi-private, and there was a ward service, but it was not, the better percentage were private patients.
Oh, okay.
And that was before recovery rooms. So we would get the patients soon after surgery. And so and you didn't have a computer, and I couldn't even spell it, let alone know what it was. And everything was documented. And so you had a quick write a note on the chart and keep taking care of those patients. And it was great. But the young nurses today, unfortunately for them, they have to spend too much time in the office working on a computer, where 95% of my time was spent with the patient.
Yes. Well, Juliana, we're getting near the end of our fun chat already. This has gone very quickly. And I always like to ask our guests a couple of different questions. One is, what was the most fun memory that you can remember from the 1950s?
Well, I think we've touched on a lot of it. My family, my being a majorette, and watching my brothers play football. It was mostly family. And then my successful choice of schools that I loved in Philadelphia. And so I went from being a little girl from the coal mines to being a semi-sophisticated Philadelphia gal. And life was good.
Good. And then what from that time period in the 50s has really stayed with you, was so influential as you got moved into adulthood?
Well, keeping in mind having had 4 children, my husband is an OBGYN, and he's the last of the solo practitioners in our community. No, there were no groups at that time, so he was gone a lot. And it was what I learned at home at the dinner table, chatting about how was your day? How was your test? You don't want carrots? Okay, try one. And what I learned at my dinner table and with my family and with the respect that my father showed us and the people around him was something I hope I was able to carry on with my kids. And
yes,
I'm 84 years old and still upright, and nobody listens to me anymore.
But you have such a wonderful personality, such a sweet personality. It was just a delight chatting with you today. And folks, viewers, our guest has been Juliana Selecky Semple from Pennsylvania, who just shared the wonderful family time that she had and later on going into her professional life in the 1950s. And perhaps some of you might have had a similar lifestyle back then. We'd like to hear about it if you do. And just comment below in this section and like this chat. We think it'd be great. So next time, we will return with another guest. It'll be number 47. We're climbing our way to number 50 in our broadcasts. And we hope that you will remember the days of the 50s if you lived then. Maybe there were some poodle skirts. Maybe there were cool cars. Maybe there was American Bandstand. Maybe there was a wonderful family relationship and everyone eating around the dinner table, as most often happened in that decade. So that's what you might have experienced in the 50s, and we'd love to hear about it. So Jackie, what do you think about where we're going for next time?
I want to remind everyone to click that red subscribe button, and as well as the thumbs up button. And we want you to tell your friends, even your relatives, about the 1950s Fun Chat. And do check out the website that's floating around the bottom, www.wildthewindmillwatch.com. There you'll be able to see all of our fun chats, number 1 to the present one. This one will be, what date, Janine, will this one be on?
This one will be live, stream live on July 25th at 8 p.m. Central.
So
and
check it out.
Yep, and then we'll be archived on our YouTube channel, the 1950s Fun Chat, of course, or on our website that you see scrolling down the bottom of the screen. So until next time, we will see you. Bye.